After I graduated from high school, I started blogging, and for the better part of 4 years, um, I was a blogger, through college. And so I'm kind of at this weird crossroads in my life. And I just remember college kind of feeling a little bit the same way, maybe a little bit better, a little worse. So I just thought to myself, what would happen if I decided to reread some of those posts? That might be a fun, interesting thing. So on August 10th, 2016, a full, 8 years ago now, something like that, I wrote this. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." So, I'm going to screen share this with you just so you're reading this along with me. But why this passage? If we become complacent to the routine, we are apathetic and our expression means nothing because we are complacent to what happens to us every day. We need to instead be defiant and rebellious of the routine because God and human nature demands it, and society's complacency to the routine becomes the first stroke of contrast between a Christian and a human. God upset the status quo, and in the righteous anger for the corruption in the routine, turned over the tables and said, "Not in my Father's house." What would happen if we decide to turn over the tables in our own life and decide to say, "Not in my life," because Jesus reigns supreme? If we are to be Christians, why are we to find safety and comfort in the routine? That is what the world does. The only constant in existence is God. No sacrament or schedule or worship song is more constant because the means will always change and the significance will always shift from person to person. God is constant. The object of our desire has always been the God who loved us enough to come and save us, and who does not love us generically but individually, and has the capacity to do that fully. Any God that we worship for the sake of, quote, leveling up is a false God, because a true God doesn't make us work for our salvation. There's too much chance involved. God is a jealous God. He leaves nothing up to chance, not one bit. That's why we believe in a plan that God has for us. To believe in works is to believe in luck and probability, and the most upsettedly, if that's a word, our own will. In the end, none of those silly things will save us from the inevitable death due to us all for being our filthy, rotten selves. Back to our first point, do not be complacent with routine. Be resourceful, be exploratory, be observant, and considerate of the routine. Look for any other way to look at it, and look for any other way to tweak or overturn it. When we live in the routine, we live in a cycle that demands control and is perpetuated by fear. Asking God for a means to break the cycle and to overturn the tables is an act of fearlessness. And in that fearlessness, we find freedom. And in freedom, we know more fully. And in that love, we experience joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control more fully. Everything controls offers us is received in sacrifice to a God. How do I say that? Everything control offers us is received in sacrifice to a God who loves us so much that he sent his son to die for us so that we might live in and with him, overturning tables better than we ever could. When a person shakes things up, someone remembers it. One way to save the world is perhaps in the business of creating memorable people. People with parts to play, with stories to tell, with connections to foster, and ideas to share. Anyone complacent with the status quo is not only apathetic, but he or she is fearful of the response of the world to an idea, not of this world. And while most might address it with a familiar fear, many might also embrace this small rebellion from the norm, and instead of shooting it down, lift it up and empower it to fly farther and faster than we could have ever expected to want to know. God says don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough worries. And so as I close this blog post, this very first blog post, I challenge you is this way. Focus on one small rebellion a day. Focus on one way to break the norm today. And don't do it every day because it wears out, but focus on ways to push back the darker shades of black and gray that invade our common brain space and turn over tables of complacency in exchange for something that drives us closer to the edge and farther from safety, the safety of the plains. Because after a while, we have to remember that Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will also do. The greater works than these he will do, because I go to the Father." Why am I making this point? To look for small ways to rebel against the norm. No, I'm not sort of saying any sort of aspiring insurgent or militant junkie whose dream is to play by his rules. And if I were God, I would have rules I already know they wouldn't work, and that they would be a greater insurgency against me to get back to onto the level where I belong. The bittersweet reality. This is the bittersweet reality. Jesus was the first person to look for the small rebellions. Because when we do this small rebellion against the cold, dark norm, we start to shed light on the realities of the heart. These rebellions create some discomfort. Discomfort leads to comfort if we exercise ourselves out of our comfort zones we are so used to. The fact we are so uncomfortable in these small rebellions reminds us of something, though. We are human, we are fallen, and that there's a reason why everyone has a comfort zone. So what if true comfort doesn't lie in complacency? What if it lies in small rebellions? What if? Quite a long conclusion, but I write this from being trapped and convinced into complacency and routine and the need for it. I tell you, while there are certain things that one should do, like eating and drinking water and talking, religion is not defined by what you do. It's defined by what's been done and what has been done and what you are feeling called to in response to what has been done. If you're complacent to the love of God and you call that your doctrine, please re-examine your beliefs. Works do not get us to God, but God deserves a response. God deserves our lives. And that's what we get to do instead of simply die to atone for our wrongdoing. No, Jesus did that for us. So instead of simply sitting on our butts, all happy and giddy like we are stoned and wasted, why don't we get up and do something that's going to change the world in response to the one who changed the world? We all have that one idea that we have always wanted to run with, but never had the chance to. If you believe you can't because that's not what Christianity is about, or that's not you, or God wouldn't have me do that, God is calling every one of us to do that crazy idea that we are all uncertain of, to that idea that seems too likely to fail, because God is a God of miracles and he wants to show us that those ideas stand with him. Complacency and routine are often places where we find peace and solace, a still water near pastures green. Remember, God is the good shepherd. He leads us there. We are sheep. We do not know what quiet really is until he takes us there. We don't know green until he takes us there. We don't know a small rebellion until he leads us to it. We only, like sheep, know complacency, and without a leader, we will inevitably fall to our doom. Do not be apathetic, complacent to a routine. Look for the small rebellions and ask God to show them to you. Simply looking for them is the first stroke of contrast between a Christian and a human. Religion is not peace, God is. Be still and know that he is who he is, and that he is leading you to small rebellions of goodness and love that will make people notice the greater picture of God's glory. Through your willingness to participate in something that contrasts from complacency and reinvents the routine to become a revolution where anything can happen and love breaks through more easily, driving out the darkness. Jesus paid the ultimate price so that we can be with him, that heaven could be on earth. The Holy Spirit is proof of that desire of God and effort. God is with us. Who can be against us? And if all is finished, why have the Holy Spirit if not only for comfort but for partnership and being with someone willing to take the risks, and who not only can take the risks, but who can determine the risks and the outcome of the dice in any hand, the cards in any deck, the heads or tails in a coin flip. Why not upset the status quo? Why not go against the norm? Why not be ambassadors of light? Why stay complacent when there are still ways to respond to what has happened? Why keep in routine when there are so many ways to express the awe and wonder of God? Why drown that out? Why stay quiet? Why preach to the choir? Why fall in line when we could be the small rebellions the world needs in order to see Jesus a little clearer? To those who convinced me of complacency, I forgive you, but I grieve for you. And if you know who you are and you are mad, then good. This is my small rebellion for today. And I plan to share with everyone this blog, the outcome of the other small rebellions God leads me to. So I remember writing that post, and it's pretty funny. So I graduated from a Lutheran high school. If you can believe it, they gave me the character award. And 8 years onward, I still can't believe they did that. But I don't know. Maybe they're better judges of character than I am. But I just remember being just so frustrated with, like the way things are and the way things could be, and the gap there. And I've always been frustrated with that. 8 years later now, I realize that my frustration is more about the gap between a confessional faith and a responsive faith. And this entire idea that we have answers, and those are the answers we have, and we don't think about answers that we don't have. Because that was one of my big things. I decided to not do any sort of like in-class theology. I actually did all of my stuff online because I didn't want to get really amped up and angry at these theology teachers that were kind of dogmatic and really were very dismissive of people from other denominations, very sectarian. And so what they would do is, if you don't ascribe to the Lutheran version of this doctrine or belief, then, they treated you differently. And I didn't want to be treated different. I also didn't want to endorse a system that was actively discriminating against, my Pentecostal, non-denominational, Catholic, insert denomination here, friends. And so that's really where most of that came. And the whole complacency bit is just sort of like really feeling boxed in to, this is what faith is, this is what our beliefs are, and you're not going to change that. There's no discussion, there's no middle ground. It's either, we're laying down the law here. And so it's just so weird reading that. It's like, it's been 8 years. And now, like, what do I do? It's like, we're supposed to turn over tables in our lives. And there's something pretty fun, pretty cool about that. I also think there's something to be said for, I don't know, you kind of get why complacency. And I mean, I'll be honest, like, I think in this current season I'm in, I'm a little crippled by fear. The theme song from Friends, "So no one told you life was going to be this way," kind of comes to mind. So that's me. But I think 8 years later, looking for ways just to be a little bit more like Jesus and to be more responsive in our faith than just simply confessional, saying, "Oh yeah, I believe this." Actually acting in a way that says, "Oh, you believe that." I think that's the big change that we need to see in Christianity, because if we aren't refreshing ourselves with the story of who God is and who he has shown himself to be, And if we aren't responding to that, we aren't abiding in him either. And if we're finding a way to ignore that, then that's also very concerning. So anyway, that is my little rant, but I just thought I'm just gonna start sharing these old blog posts now. And I don't know. This might be a fun little experiment. Might be a fun little bit of content. Anyway, until next time.